Hello out there, and welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Frazier. Tonight's guest, the Occidental Taoist himself, joins us live back on the show here, folks. Should be an interesting evening. So we're back, restructured, took the summer off to kind of regroup and relaunch the show here, think things through. Some of the changes you'll see coming up, folks, is that most notably, you won't see the Grey Wizard of Historical Knowledge on the show as much. My friend Eric Smith is finishing up his master's degree, and time permitting, he'll be back on periodically. But it's the relaunch, so we thought it'd be a really good idea to bring back one of our early guests, and he's sitting in the hot seat with us tonight, Mr. Jeff Cote. How you doing tonight?
Good, Matt. How you doing?
Not too bad, buddy. So this is it. This is us. We've relaunched the show, a little leaner, a little meaner, possibly even a little greener. I'm going to institute a policy of no plastic straws on the show. I think that's a pretty good idea.
I think that's a great idea, man.
Yeah, that'll win us over. That'll get a lot of fans on side right there, right?
Oh yeah, sure. That's a hot topic.
So anyway, buddy, it's been a while. I haven't checked in with you in a bit, and wanted to, circle back. I think it's a kind of appropriate that we kind of get back to where we started from. But so what's new in the world of the Occidental Taoist? What's going on with you lately?
Well, lately I've been working on a public access television show.
No kid.
And no kidding. I've got 3 episodes that have been released. The 4th is in its final edits. Episodes 5 and 6 are in the can and are getting some preliminary editing done. I'm supposed to be shooting episodes 7 and 8 next week, and we've got a plan for 16 more for the first season.
Holy cow! So what is it that you guys are covering in this public access television show?
It's the access show is called Tai Chi, the Way to Radiant Health. And it's basically, it's an instructional series of half-hour shows on Tai Chi. I take it from, basic warm-ups all the way through a beginner-level set form. And, I try to share my insight and knowledge of health and longevity. I mean, my practice in Asian medicine was focused in longevity. I mean, even when I went to school, we had to pick a sort of concentration in our final year. And I chose longevity in the aging body because it was the most fascinating thing to me about Taoism was how these ancient Chinese dudes that were really focused on spiritual development and metaphysics decided to make longevity a huge part of their daily practice and their study. And the reason why is they believe to really understand the nature of reality, it took so long and such a lifetime commitment that they needed a long time to develop it. So they made, with the kind of discipline that they uniquely had, a study of longevity. And I'm a guy who I'd really like to live a long time and live well. I'd like to be 95 years old and still tooling around doing things that are probably bad ideas.
Does this surprise you, Jeff? I mean, because, look, we've known each other over, almost 25 years at this point, right? If not,
yeah,
well, maybe
a little bit more.
20, yeah, something like that. But does it surprise you because obviously you've been doing this for a while, so there's a level of health and fitness that you just sort of are used to, right? But does it surprise you when you look at the population in general, especially people that are past the age of 40, and how, I guess, diminished they are compared to where they could be with just a little effort?
Surprise, not really, but it does sadden me. I think a large part of it is that we've kind of accepted a certain expectation and it's a false expectation. It's, people believe that, like, oh, you're just going to decline once you're this age. And I mean, there's a certain measure of declining that's going to happen. There's just, we all age, we're all going to die. That's the truth. But we do not have to have as powerfully a diminished capacity as what is expected. And I think that expectation sets up a lot of things, and it sets up a lot of behaviors that are not conducive to maintaining longevity and health and vitality and vigor. And I think that's why it doesn't surprise me, because I can look around and I can see it. I mean, it's in our culture. You see it in television shows and movies, and everywhere you look, there is this message being sent to you that once you're a certain age, you're going to fall apart, and that's not true.
It's amazing to me because I get, because I recently took a journey back into physical fitness and trying to get my health put back together and stuff like that, because I was just getting to the point where just moving was starting to hurt. Getting out of a chair was painful, things like that. But I know that it came from a mostly sedentary lifestyle. So I guess I had the instinct to say, hey man, you got to get up and start moving around and doing something different. But what really shocks me, and maybe I don't know that, I don't want to speak for everybody, okay? But I don't feel like it takes a tremendous amount of effort to get to I don't want to say at a great level of health, but at least a functional one. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'll be honest with you. It doesn't until you get to a certain point. My observation has been, I work with a lot of councils on aging. That's been my primary model of the delivery of the Tai Chi and Qigong that I do teach. Not the only one, but it's been my primary. And my observation has been, once you have gone sedentary for long enough and have aged into that long enough, then it does take much larger efforts. But see, the reality is the efforts, it's not that the activities need to be more intense. It's that the ability to do those simple activities is that much more diminished. And so it does take a sort of Herculean effort of discipline and will to get yourself to do that, because it's so uncomfortable to in that initial phase. I would say the initial 3 weeks of effort. I have worked with people that it is a challenge for them to walk a mile every day. That is, it's their muscles hurt so much from that they have a hard time. That's an extreme. Not the most extreme, but it is an extreme.
Right.
At the same time, I also have the great gift of seeing people in my Tai Chi classes who have done other things as well, have done yoga or Pilates or any number of other exercise routines, and they're in their 80s, and they're starting Tai Chi, and their capacity is well above people that I've encountered in their 40s and 50s. The thing I tell people, and I try to tell people, is be as active as you can, as young as you can, and maintain it as long as you can.
Yeah.
Like, just move. A lot of times people are like, well, what do I do? There's this, we in this country have an idea about exercise that's rather extreme. We don't do things by halves.
Right.
In our exercise, where you get this P90X, Insanity,
Yep.
all this other stuff, and those are, I'm not knocking them. They're really powerful and intense workouts, but for most people, they're not truly sustainable.
Yep.
There will be some people who will start them and sustain them long term, but your average person is not going to be able to sustain that, because the
Right.
lifestyle is too intense, and the exercise routine is honestly too intense for their capabilities. If
Sure.
if you have old injuries, you have to know how to modify them. You have to know how to do things in modifications that's going to prevent you from having injuries. You just went through one yourself with your knee.
Yep.
Torn meniscus, if I'm not incorrect.
That's correct.
Am I
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, and those types of things can be really derailing to somebody who's trying to really make a change, and then they have something like that, and it demotivates, and then it reinforces this idea that they're just getting old and they're falling apart, and then they have to believe that, and in some ways they want to believe that because it gives them the reason to stop. For some people, and for other people, it makes it so hard for them to break through the barrier of consistency that
Right.
builds momentum. I tell people all the time, my secret to discipline, you remember me when I was young. While I may have been driven, disciplined, self-disciplined was not in my nature.
As all of
Um,
us at that age, right?
sure, yeah, and you're especially young guys. There are some. I've met some guys. I sometimes I'm astounded by some of the young guys that I've met. I had a young gentleman that was training with me, and he was like 20 when he first started. His name is Justin, and he was one of the most disciplined people I've ever seen in my life. He was this 20-year-old kid, and he would buckle down and make himself do an hour to 2 hours of training every day without fail. And I don't mean like really intense exercise. It was like this meditative sort of focus exercise. And sometimes he wasn't really getting what the exercise, whatever I had him working on, was about right away. But he would just still do it, and he would do it and do it and do it until he got it. I had this other young gentleman, a guy by the name of Steve, who lives in Indiana now. He came to me, wanted to learn Toi Na, and I've never seen anybody less suited to learning that art in my life, just in terms of natural talents, and he had some neurological things that was going on, and I told him that it was going to take a tremendous amount of work, and this young gentleman, um, I would tell him to do something. I said, this is what I recommend you do, and he would just do it, and he would just keep doing it, and then he would report back to me like 3 or 4 weeks later and say, okay, I've been doing this every day, like you said, for this long, and this is what I've noticed, and I was just like, wow, you actually took that and did that? I couldn't have done that when I was 20. Somebody would have told me to do that. I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then 3 days later, I'd have been like, yeah, I'm done with that.
Yeah. I
But
find it. I would like your give me kind of your opinion on this. One of the things that I've been discovering lately is I think that it's imperative, sort of, to the human condition to have to struggle and work at something, to do something that's not easy, that doesn't come easy, and that you have to work at. I think I feel that having that is important. You got to do, like, go suffer for something. It's important that you, to yourself, that you suffer to accomplish something, And I think it's important to your psychology and stuff too.
well, it's interesting. I think that there's a value in the struggle and having to work hard.
More eloquently
and
put, for sure.
and
Yeah.
and dig in and like reach down into your gut a little bit and find resolve
Right.
and learn to apply that over time. There's a value in that. I don't necessarily know that there's a value in suffer. I think that we tend to suffer when that happens because I think we have to learn how to let go of the suffering part of struggle.
Right.
And recognize that there is something sweet in there. As the Chinese say, in order to taste sweet, you must first taste bitter. And I think that that's getting to something important. That we do have a need to engage with suffering, but I think that when we arrive at the thing that's the real value in there is when we learn to let go of the suffering part,
Right.
but embrace the hard work.
Yeah, because to someone that's doing it, if you ask them, are you suffering, they wouldn't say yes. But I guess I'm saying that only from the standpoint of someone that's outside looking in. Is it looks grueling, or it looks,
well, no, I would say that at times it was suffering for me, and I think it is people when they're really engaged with the thing in one way or another. It's not necessarily, if somebody when I first studied with Dr. Hua, there was a practice he gave me where I had to hold these buckets of water up. And I got to tell you, that was brutal. It was hard, and it was suffering. mean, it hurt. My body struggled. I struggled. And the funny part, though, is as hard as it was physically, it was far more difficult emotionally. And that's the thing. I think that's the thing where we have to break through. We have to break through all of those expectations we set up, expectations of success, and expectations of immediate action and winning as part of it, but rather start to see the process of developing whatever it is we're looking to develop as the process rather than the goal.
Right.
And for me, when I arrived at an appreciation of the process, all the suffering went away.
Right.
And even, not that it isn't physically challenging sometimes, and I try to regularly physically challenge myself in my practice. I try to constantly go up to the very edges of my capacity and keep nudging them just a little bit more. And that's always uncomfortable. But when that happens, when you arrive at the appreciating the beauty of the process, that place no longer becomes suffering. It becomes sweet, because now you're at that edge. You're in the game. You're in the game of forging yourself through the fire of your will. And there's something beautiful. Now, I come from a martial arts background, so of course I've got this sort of, forging a weapon or forging something, hammering yourself out into this thing. But it doesn't have to be that. It just happens to be the metaphor I use for it, because it's the culture in which I developed this.
I think it's funny when you look at the westernization of especially martial arts, and how those tenets get changed. Like you had made the comment a little bit ago about what it was, that you have to taste something bitter to taste something sweet. I don't want to murder that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You must first taste bitter before you can taste sweet.
Yeah, and then we end up with terms today like you need to conquer your inner bitch. You know what I mean? Like it's so westernized now. I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what the ancient masters were thinking, Oh, conquer inner bitch,
I could just hear Dr. Wah saying that. You must conquer your inner bitch.
Yeah, right? I mean, and how that all gets conflated and turned around, like even in things like yoga, and I'm sure it's going to happen to things like Tai Chi and stuff like that too, where you have that sort of newer, new age approach to it, and you see yoga studios turning. I mean, they pop up everywhere nowadays, right? I mean, for crying out loud, I just read an article that in Sweden, I think it was Sweden or Scandinavia, someplace, that there's a Burger King with a sauna in it. Like weird stuff like that. But it's interesting to me how a lot of the Eastern culture stuff now is being incorporated into, and I don't have a better word for it than New Age. I don't know what else to call it, but there's definitely something going on where a lot of these sort of, the martial arts and the philosophies and the stuff like that are sort of weirdly being amalgamated into Western culture. And
sure. That's what we do. That's what the Western culture is known for. Is for we're the robber barons of culture, of society.
The kings of Me
we
Too.
Go and we grab something and absorb it. But the problem that comes from it, I think, is that we grab it without really understanding it, and without really immersing ourselves deeply enough in it, and then we try to put all the trappings and ideas that we have with a very superficial immersion into the thing. The one thing that our culture that our culture will often forget is that all of these practices and arts were developed over generation after generation after generation, and these things that we've adopted as these pithy sayings are things that are perennial wisdoms that evolved over time from teacher to teacher to teacher and refined into their essence. And there's an interesting current of consciousness that you tie to when you let yourself go there, and then you sink into it long enough. When I first started studying martial arts, I did sort of the survey of martial arts. I spent a year or two in a whole bunch of different ones, and I had a lot of natural talent, so I picked up a lot very quickly, and I advanced through belts and stuff like that. When I was in arts that cared about that sort of thing, and it went back and forth from different stuff, and I had a fair amount of really superficial level skill, and I really thought that I understood martial arts at the time. And it wasn't until I actually, I've studied Tai Chi now for 26 years straight, just really making Tai Chi a central part of my practice. And now I realize that, that depth has a value that all of the switching back and forth could never have gotten me. That doing the simplest of things, like standing practice, there's a standing practice called Wuji in Tai Chi. That standing practice and spending, half hour to an hour over and over and over and over again daily over that amount of time has brought me a level of insight about the idea of how your mind goes into action to create the stability of your body or the action of a movement in a way I would never have gotten without having done that one simple thing over and over and over and over and over again, so much that I became aware on a deep level of the interaction between the body and mind. And that's what we miss in this. We are always trying to move on to the next new thing. That's what the culture does. And I think that's the danger of that, reaching out and just trying to take more into the culture, when really it comes from a great place because we're seeking. We're all seeking. But all of these cultures say the same thing: is that the thing you're looking for really isn't outside of you, and it doesn't really matter what you choose to do. You can do anything. I mean, I've watched you play guitar, and I can tell you unequivocally that you have attained some of that same thing in just playing a guitar.
Yeah. There's a zen to it,
because
for
of
sure.
The way,
yeah.
Yeah, because there's an immersion into the moment that you've given, and you've really given yourself over into the practice enough that you're touching something ineffable there.
Yeah, it becomes fluid, for sure.
Yeah.
From repetition and comfort. Familiarity is probably a better word, I would say.
Sure.
Yeah,
well, you become a clear channel for the music itself.
Right. Yeah, because I'm past the point. Okay, so what happens is, and I didn't realize this until I got there, right? And I don't think people really respect it, but what happens is that once you've practiced something enough, it becomes where you're not actually, I'm trying to think how to explain this. I'm not actually thinking about the notes. I'm hearing the complementary music in my head, and my hands are just kind of doing it. Does that make sense?
Right.
Within the capacity
totally.
of my capability. It's within the capacity of my capability. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You've become a clearer conduit for the art itself, for art.
But not a perfect one. It's still imperfect, and it probably always will be. But at least it's understandable, I guess, is what it translates into. Here's a question for you. With obviously, 25 years doing Tai Chi, you're a Chinese medicine practitioner, you've been around martial arts the better part of your life, if not almost your whole life, right? When you see how martial arts is morphing today, where do you feel ideologically, where does one draw the line and say, this is no longer even the same thing anymore? That and this is not even respecting the original form or the original art, because obviously martial arts, whether it's kung fu, whatever it is, okay, has evolved. It had to have evolved. It didn't start out in the form that we see it today. But there's a lot of people, the traditionalists, that are like, you can't change anything. And then there's other people that are like, it still has to evolve, right? So where do you sort of draw that line ideologically with the disciplines?
I think that all of us have to practice the art that our personal exploration brings us to. And that is very much a personal thing. I don't think that trying to separate the art from the artist is ludicrous. It's like trying to ask the question, if a tree falls in the woods and there's nothing and no one around to hear it, does it make a sound?
Right.
If there's not a person to express the art, does the art exist?
Ooh, that's deep.
So for me, it's like I try to drop these ideas. I try to drop a lot of my ideas around all of it, and I just do it. I just do the art. I do what I've been taught, and I do what I've learned.
Sure.
And they are not the same thing. What I was taught was the guidance I was given into something that's bigger than the finger that's pointing at the moon. The art itself, like the forms, a Tai Chi form, is a finger that points at the moon. It isn't Tai Chi. It is something that helps you aim yourself so that you can arrive at Tai Chi. The forms, if it was true that the form of Tai Chi was the only true way to arrive at Tai Chi, then there wouldn't be different styles. It would be impossible for there to be different styles.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And everybody would have to do it exactly the same way. And I can tell you right now you can have two people that were taught by the same master at the same time, through the same years, be fantastic at the art. And neither of them will do it exactly the same. They won't even do it exactly the same every time they do it. And you can watch them, and 2 years from now, their form will look very different from the way it does today.
Yeah.
That tells me everything I need to know about the art. Is the tradition important? Absolutely, because it's the finger that points at the moon. Is the tradition important? Absolutely not, because it's only the finger that points at the moon.
Okay. So it's yin and yang. It's sort of both.
Sure, I think so. At least that's, for me, it's like where I draw the line is what I'm doing helping me to understand and perform this art better? If it isn't, then I discard it.
Right.
If it is, then I explore deeper. If I discard it, it doesn't mean I discard it permanently. It may not be helping me right now because I have not developed something else yet. So I will bring it back around later and examine it again. And that is something that's very important. I think sometimes we tend to throw babies out with our bathwater.
Right.
We'll go, well, this isn't working for me, and I pitch it. And I'll be honest with you, had I done that with things I was doing at the beginning, I would never have gotten where I am today with my Tai Chi.
Sure.
I would have probably thrown out the standing, despite knowing how important it was intellectually from everything I was told, because for the first couple of years, my standing didn't yield a lot of fruit because I didn't really understand how to do it properly. I didn't even really understand what it was I was doing.
Right. It's
what I was supposed to be doing.
One of the things, because, you do Tai Chi. I just started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 8 months ago or something like that. And it's, I guess, what's impressive to me is how you can learn something and think you understand it, and then you can learn one dimension of it that will completely change everything. Like, I'm trying to think of a real good example. Recently, my coach is a guy named John Barrows. He teaches for 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and we were doing, I go to class and stuff, and we were working on what's called north-south. And I don't know if you understand what that is, if they have that in Tai Chi or not, but that's basically where you're on your back, someone's laying on top of you, and your feet are facing opposite directions from each other, north-south, right? And so we were working on these techniques to escape from that, to get out from underneath somebody, And one of the things that was really cool was that he showed us this thing where you literally just reach down and grab your knee and set up. And it was effortless. Like there was no effort involved in it at all, And I'd been learning all these things, like flipping your feet over the person's back, trying to get it under their waist so that you can move, all these other really kind of complicated things. And he was like, no, I just do this. Boom. And it was like this super simple. I couldn't even believe how smart it was or how simple it was, but it was nothing that I'd ever even heard of before. And it was just something he kind of developed, but he developed it from a knowledge of all the other ways that you do this. And he was like, well, screw this. This is easier, and he sort of just developed this technique. But that's in departing from the traditional tenets that are taught inside that art. So that's why I was kind of getting at, at what point is evolution? Do you think that evolution is always good, or do you think that there's a point where it's no longer good?
Well, I think evolution is good as long as it's respecting what your goal and your process are. I think that evolution can't. I think when evolution is done solely for the sake of uniqueness, that there's a problem. Because then a person isn't necessarily evolving the art, he's just changing it. And that's not the same thing at all.
Okay.
Evolving an art is something that improves on things because so there's in the theories of evolution, there's this idea that there's a successful evolutionary advancement and an unsuccessful evolutionary advancement, correct?
Right.
So we can apply that to any art you're evolving. You can make an evolutionary advancement, and you can convince yourself it's successful because it's not really put under test, or it's successful in certain circumstances and not in others. But it's your pet little thing because you created it. So you don't evolve it any further because it's your pet thing.
Right.
Instead of refining it. Now, if it's truly an evolution and you're committed to that, then you're not adhering to it out of some dogma of this is my thing and I own it and I want people to acknowledge that, or I'm going to pass it on because it's I, there's the sense of I being added to it. But instead, hey, dude, check this out. I found this really easy way to do this.
Right.
Check this out. And that's a very different process. And I think that the evolution of the art or any art it's a good thing, and it's an inevitable thing. Every teacher is looking, hopefully, to have their students surpass them. When I teach Tai Chi, I want all of my students to be able to have the value of my 25 years of practice without having to go through that 25 right away. I want to distill that down to something that they can get in 5 years so that in 25, they've added 20 years of practice on top of my 25.
I see. Yep.
Rather than just they are going through the same 25 years I did.
Right.
Now, there's a certain amount of that has to happen. Those fundamentals need to be worked with at that level. But hopefully they can gain from the insight and wisdom, and I can help them shortcut a few things. Not go down routes of exploration that I already went down that didn't yield very much fruit.
Right.
Or if they do, they go in with it aware that, hey, doing this way and doing this way will likely lead you here, but maybe I made a misstep along the way, and that's why I got there. And they can notice that and then take it and go even further with something that I ended up having to drop. And they are able to do that because of the insight that I gave them about where I was coming from when I did it.
Does
You know what I mean?
does Tai Chi have a like a promotional system like karate does with belts and other martial arts? Does it have that? I'm not even sure.
Not traditionally.
No.
Not traditionally. It's starting to now. There's becoming a codified system and all that, and it depends upon the school and the system and all that. There was always a sort of level of advancement, but it wasn't really formalized with belts and levels and things like that. It was more like there was a much more informal thing. Like there was what was known as the outer court students, and those were the students who, they came in on a semi-regular basis, and or a regular basis. It just wasn't as often or as deeply as other people. Maybe they'd come in every day, have an hour of practice, and they'd get all the senior students, and maybe the master would be there, and he would oversee all the training and all that. But you didn't necessarily get a lot of personalized attention. And you're learning the fundamentals of the art, and they're assessing your personality and your character and your commitment. And then from there, there's the inner court. This inner court students, then you'd be invited into the sort of the behind the closed door, so to speak. And this is sort of like the more, it's more advanced in the training, but there's also a more advanced talent pool. Like the talent of the practitioners is a little higher, and the commitment is a little bit deeper. There's a lot more personal practice that's going on outside of the practice hall,
right?
The kun or the temple, and then there was the indoor students. And those are the students who are invited into the master's home. And there were much fewer of them, maybe 4 or 5. And they would get, a lot more, much more personalized teaching and a lot of the secrets and all that. And then there was the behind the closed door in the home. There was the 1 or 2 exceptional students who are going to get all of the master's secrets. And you wouldn't necessarily always advance to that. Not everybody would advance to that,
right?
Obviously, and those are the all of them were disciples, but there were varying degrees of advancement and ability and commitment but there were so many factors that play a role in that. That's sort of part of a tradition in the Chinese style. But they didn't have the belts and things like that you see in the Japanese.
Right.
Modern Japanese, and I don't know that the ancient Japanese had that either. I don't, I think that that's a more modern invention. When things get systematized, and federations get involved, and a whole bunch of different teachers trying to find common ground and saying what the skill level are, and that's also a marketing strategy. To be honest with you, it's a money-making strategy. It's a marketing strategy. When you've got belts, then you've got tests you can give, and you can charge people for that because it's more of your time.
Right.
But they also have to get new belts and equipment and all that, and you give, and for Americans and for a lot of people, having that goal-oriented process thing is really important. People need goals to shoot for, and not that there's anything wrong with goals. Goals are a great thing, but remember that this is an art that's about processes. The goals are there to set up processes that you explore.
Mm-hmm.
If you forget about process and your aim at goal, you're going to miss something along the way, and you're actually going to hamper your skill level. You're going to be so goal-focused that you're going to miss the actual process that gives you the skill you're looking for.
Right.
And instead, you're going to be repeating things without really ever understanding them. And I think that's a danger in belts. It's very ego gratifying.
Yep.
I reached this level this fast.
Right.
I'm at this level and you're at that level. It's comparative. And the thing I loved about Tai Chi was that it seemed to be non-comparative. I mean, there's an element of like you want to play. They have games called toy show or push hands or sensing hands, depending on how you want to translate it. Pushing hands is the real translation, but for me, I think when you come at it from the perspective of pushing hands, you've got it in your mind that you're competing with somebody, which then takes you out of the mindset you need to be to really get it. There may be a competitive aspect, but if you're focused on the competitive aspect, you're going to lose, even if you win, because you're not going to learn what you should be learning from it. Anyway.
You're saying that especially in an instructional environment too, right? The goal is to learn,
oh yeah,
not to compete in that specific situation type thing. So you feel that hampers the learning process.
absolutely, totally, because you're so focused on winning that you'll lock it. See, maybe it's unique to Tai Chi. I can't say for sure because I haven't spent 25 years in another art.
Sure, right. Yep.
But my experience with Tai Chi is if you're focused on winning, you're going to lend the force of your being to committing to specific actions, and you're going to lose adaptability. And it's not that you can't not want to win, but you can't want to win either.
And I see this all the time, man, where they'll stick a XYZ, whether it's Tai Chi or Kung Fu or something like that, fighter, and they'll put them in a ring like with an MMA fighter. And then they'll use that as like some sort of justification to say that one's better or superior than the other. And I think that misses the point of what the intent of the martial art actually is to begin with, per se. Does that make sense?
Well,
like, I don't think it's fair to take somebody that's a smasher, you know what I mean, and a brawler necessarily, and stick them in a situation of an art that's not entirely, I don't feel entirely just about beating the crap out of people. It's about discipline and balance and health and it's all of these other things too, you know. So to me, that was always like putting a car against an airplane and saying which one can fly faster. Well, that's a stupid argument, you know. What's the point of that? They do different things.
Well, here's the other thing too. The rules around MMA are designed in such a way that MMA has evolved to what it is.
Yeah.
The techniques that work in MMA have become what they are because they've been tested and proven in that arena.
A refinement of efficiency, yeah.
Here's the thing, though. There's a whole bunch of things you can do in a real fight that you can't do in an MMA fight.
That's true.
And while that MMA fighter may be able to smash you, if you stick your finger in that dude's eye and you pop it out of its socket, that's going to take a lot of fight out of him very fast.
Yeah, the difference.
But you can't do that in MMA.
Right. You can't fish hook, you can't eye gouge, you can't ball grab, you can't do a lot of things. Even though it's supposed to be true street fighting, it's not. It's evolved. You're right.
But it isn't. No, absolutely not. Nobody's got a knife. No one's going to pull out a gun. No, look.
The closest you probably get is probably the very first UFC events. Was the closest I think you've ever seen to that. Remember when that Samoan guy got his teeth kicked out, you know, and stuff like that? Yeah. You can't kick a downed opponent anymore. They took that out too. So they because it was too brutal, it was too realistic. But even like you said, even then there was no eye gouging or fish hooks. Even in those first events. So even they had restrictions on it, to your point.
There's no punching in the throat. No, you know, there's I'm not saying that you know you can take a Tai Chi guy who's willing to be brutal and put him against an MMA guy and he's going to win. I don't know. There are masters I've studied with that I think would. I also think that there are MMA guys who could probably hurt them before they'd get a chance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anybody who thinks that there's some like this style is better than that style, or this style will always beat that style, or they're forgetting things that are intangibles in conflict.
Right.
The will of the person, the overall health that they're in at the time, what's going on in their lives, the psychology. There's so many elements to the outcome of any conflict.
Right.
That to try to lay it down to one thing being the determining factor is just, it's ludicrous.
Right.
I mean, how many times have you seen two guys who are of equal experience fight, and one time one guy wins, and another time another guy wins, and then the other guy wins again, and maybe he wins 2 or 3 times, and the other guy wins.
Right.
But eventually, after maybe 2 or 3 times, the other guy's will gets broken a little bit, and he doesn't believe he can win, so he starts losing more. I mean, there's the resilience of the fighter, like the emotional resilience, the resilience of his psyche in terms of his ability to believe in himself. And like I said, there's so many other factors. Put a guy in a fight who's just found out his wife's leaving him and his kid's got cancer. Do you think his head's going to be in that game?
Right.
Not at all. Not at all. And so there's no.
It's way more complicated than that. It's not simply this is better than that because Hulk smash kind of situation. There's more
Sure.
to it than that. Yeah, for sure.
Right. At the same time, I will be the first one to say that the art of MMA has evolved to be a very effective fighting art.
Sure. But it gets its roots from boxing, wrestling, kickboxing, karate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all in there. That's the funny part about it.
Thai, jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
There's judo. There's judo dudes who are really successful in MMA. I mean, there's dudes who are wrestlers who are really successful.
I think Ashigurami is a judo throw, and that's what they call it. And heel kicks and spinning wheel kicks, and these are all the terms that are used from their original martial art form that they come from. And now it's amalgamated.
And then you have the Superman punch.
Yeah, then you have the Superman punch, right? Which is like its own thing. Yep.
Right. And then you have that dude who I watched. He ran up on the cage and did a spinning kick running off the side of the cage and knocked some dude out. It was beautiful. I was like, it was gorgeous. That was a moment of adaptability where he read the energy and the dynamics of the flow of the fight itself, and he was there and he was just in the moment. And I think that's the thing that jazzes people who do these things.
Yeah, that was almost
what jazzes me when I.
Yeah, it almost has its roots in like parkour or something like that. That's not even martial arts. What the hell's that?
Or the kung fu the old kung fu stuff where they would run up a wall and flip over a dude. I mean, the old Chinese opera house style martial art.
I got to tell you,
Shaolin based.
I got my wife, we had a rainy weekend a couple weekends ago, or last weekend is what it was. So we sat down and if you haven't done this, man, I highly recommend it. Go to like Netflix or Amazon Prime and those, and all of those old kung fu movies are on there.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God,
yeah, no,
man.
I watch all the time.
And then the old Japanese monster movies, man. Oh, they're so good. We're going back, rewatching all these old Japanese monster movies. And it was funny because I think it was called Varian or something like that. I can't think of what it was. Anyway, same, radiation, eggs, monsters out of the ocean, Tokyo's screwed. It's the same old rinse, repeat, right? Situation. But Godzilla. So it was, what was hilarious, my wife and I are watching this, right, dude? And there's in the movie, of course it's all overdubbed in English, with terrible English actors. But I think the movie, it was black and white, and I think it was back in the late 50s or something. Oh, no, it was Color. But it was like the late 50s, early 60s. And there was a female actor in her part. She was like a reporter. And it was It was stunning, Jeff, to watch. Like the guy literally looked at her and said, well, maybe you should just go back home and have babies. It was like, there's like this weird, and I looked at my wife and I'm like, holy crap, look how sexist these things were back. And they just no apology at all, man. Like this woman was like, either be a reporter or just go home and have babies, was kind of the thing about it. And so I would highly recommend if you get the chance, go back and rewatch some of those. But those old kung fu movies and stuff too are just so much fun now to go and rewatch.
When Susan and I first met, we at one point we spent must have been a week solid, where every time I wasn't working, we were on the couch watching a samurai movie.
Right.
And we just watched one after another. And that I got to tell you, the old, Akira Kurosawa and that entire genre of old samurai movies are just such an incredible pleasure to watch. They're just so artistically well done, and they're just such great stories. But there's also an element of just sort of like sometimes there's camp, there's
Yep.
it's just campy, and like you said, sometimes shockingly dated statements.
Yeah, right.
At the same time, it's all brilliant film work, and anyways, you just reminded me of that. It just, brought back a fond memory.
So one of the things that we talked about, not to change gears on you here, man, but one of the things that we had talked about in one of your previous shows you did with us was being and this goes back to diet and stuff like that, but being mindful of what you eat, right? And I kind of really took that to heart, and I've really started paying a lot of attention to what I eat. But there's another component to that, and I just kind of wanted your take on it. It also is when you eat is something that you don't hear a lot of people talking about, but that I've really dialed in on lately. But not only what you eat, but when you do it is of like paramount importance as well.
Well, there's also a component of what you eat when. There's what you eat, there's when you eat, and there's what you eat when.
Right.
So, like one of the techniques I use, and it comes out of like spending a lifetime of just always wanting to listen to my body. I use my own body as my primary source of wisdom for what I'm doing, what I'm going to put into it, what I'm going to do for my routine when I practice, what my body needs.
Right.
And when I go to eat something, one of the things I'll do is I'll stop and I'll imagine eating it. And then I listen to what my body's reaction is. How does it feel as I imagine eating that thing and going in and getting into my body? And that informs me a lot.
Right.
There'll be one time I can imagine, say, okay, we've decided, families decide we want to go for ice cream. And I imagine doing that, and my body's like, I suddenly, after I imagine doing that, I feel heavy and sluggish, or it feels like it would be heavy and sluggish and just kind of sit in my stomach or whatever. And so then I choose not to do it.
Right.
Because it's like I don't want to feel that way. What that's doing is my body's telling me that right now, if I have that, that's going to make my digestive chi, or my what the digestive processes, anyways, slow down and become less effective and efficient, and it's just not going to be good for me.
Right.
At other times, I'll imagine it, and it feels fine. It feels like, okay, I feel upbeat, and my body feels like it's cool, and it's okay, and it feels good, and all that, and it's like I end up trying it, and every time when I don't listen to it, when it tells me I'm going to feel sluggish and all that, I end up feeling sluggish and heavy, and I wish I hadn't had it. And then when I listen to it and it tells me it's okay, and I do it, and it is okay. It ends up being okay. Your body will actually inform you about it. And also sometimes I'll be like, I don't know what I want to eat. My body wants something and I don't know what it is. And it's not about a craving, but it's literally about something my body needs. And so then I'll kind of cycle through things, and I'll literally like, okay, I'll imagine smelling some broccoli and tasting it, or I'll imagine smelling some fish and tasting it, or and ultimately when I cycle through that, I can often land on the thing that my body actually really wants, and it becomes a very good tool for that. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm 100% perfect with that, about always listening to it and always remembering to do that. But I, like all of the disciplines that I've instituted in my life, it has been an ongoing process of improving it and making it more a regular part of everything that I do.
I've been sharing,
and that's all.
You've seen it, I'm sure, on Facebook. But I started kind of sharing my journey, and my progress and stuff like that on Facebook with people. And when I started doing that, it's funny, and I won't name names, but I've received, and you must see this too, dude, but I've received dozens of like private messages and stuff of people asking me, what are you doing? How are you doing this? What's BJJ? That's a big one. But, and I told my wife, and I've told some other people this, if people really knew how little I actually do, they'd be shocked. Okay. Because I don't, it looks like, I think, that I probably hit the gym 5-6 times a week. That's not the case. Actually, I don't even belong to a gym. I don't have a gym membership except for, my jiu-jitsu lessons. That's the only gym I belong to of any kind at all. Okay. And that my goal there is once a week. I'm old and it hurts sometimes, but my goal there is once a week. But everything else has been very limited, working out at home. But the vast majority of it has been what I eat and when I eat it. It's not even difficult. That's what's, and I try to explain this to people and I think that there's this impression that physical health and physical well-being requires some sort of eldritch level of effort, and it does not at all.
And understanding.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people that make a lot of money off of keeping it that way.
I got one of those resistance band sets from Dick's Sporting Goods. Okay, that's my gym. Almost the entirety of it. And that's my gym. That's it. And it's one of them things, you stick in the crack of a door and shut the door and then you pull against it kind of thing. Real simple. I like it because I travel a lot. So it's something that I can take on the road with me. I can use it in a hotel room, no problem. So it never, but a lot of people think that, I'd get fit. I don't have time to go to the gym. Well, who said anything about going to the gym? There's no requirement that you go to a gym to get in shape. That's like a misconception, I think, that a lot of people have. Yeah.
I don't even use resistance bands. I use nothing. I use myself.
Just body weight.
My body weight.
Yep.
My body weight, and actually mostly isometrics.
Yep.
Most of it is isometric exercise, at least in terms of any strength building work that I do.
Right.
And I have all the muscle I need.
Right.
I have all the muscle that I want to have. And the reason why I mean, you remember when I was younger, I would lift weights and
yeah, we all did, right?
I kind of got into I got into working out quite a bit. And, I spent hours and hours at the gym at various times. At one time I was 1 to 2 hours every day in the gym, 6 days a week, and I got to tell you, I never had the kind of flexibility I have now, and I never had the kind of muscular endurance that I have now.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, I mean, it's hard for me to kind of really estimate how much I work out, because I teach Tai Chi and Qigong, which isn't strenuous, but I certainly am exercising.
Right.
It's light, but it's a very light exercise for most of it, and I incorporate some elements. Everything that I do is about holding postures and moving through them. A lot of people think like, okay, well, your arms, holding your arms out isn't that hard, but try holding your arms out for 20 minutes.
Right. Yep.
Just holding them straight out for 20 minutes. That suddenly becomes a lot of work.
Yep.
Now, I do that multiple times and throughout the day, and I do it for various periods of time, and I'm basically doing it, my Tai Chi class, I have anywhere between 3 and 4 hours of Tai Chi classes in a day. And then I've got my own practice that I do, but my own practice is really short comparatively, because I get all of my fundamentals practice in all of my classes.
And the classes that you teach, right? Yep.
Right. So now when I want to do something for myself, I'm doing the things that I just want to do.
Right.
I don't have to go through the fundamentals because I've already gone through the fundamentals 3 and 4 times, for 3 or 4 hours. And so now I can explore whatever I want to explore.
Right.
And that's kind of the good thing about teaching, is that it forces you to practice a lot. There was a period of time where I think I was averaging 5 to 6 hours of classes in a day.
Right.
It was probably about a 3 or 4 year period in there where I was averaging between 5 and 6 hours of classes a day, and that was awesome. That was awesome because it was so instrumental into my development as a practitioner. Getting that much practice on the fundamentals in a day, every day, was just it revolutionized my abilities and gave me such a kind of a boost. And I tell all my students that tell me they're really serious and they want to get really great at this art, I'm like, well, then you have to figure out how to teach it, how to
that's
set it
huge.
up
Yep.
in such a way that you're spending time teaching, because that's really what's going to do it for you.
When I was doing, because I used to sell industrial automation systems, right? That's kind of what I do.
Yep.
But that was always our thing. Is if you really want to understand a technology, teach it, because you'll learn it at a level no one else will, because when you're teaching it, people ask you questions. So
They ask you questions you'd never think to ask.
Exactly. So you get the benefit of that. I called it at bats. Some people call it reps, multiple exposures to the same subject matter, whatever it is. That's key to really understanding a subject, and the best way to learn that is to teach it. There's no other. It sounds counterintuitive. It's like, well, you should know it first. Nah, believe me, that actually doesn't really work out that way.
You have to have a basic understanding.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. You have to have a basic understanding. But there was one of the best things Dr. Hua ever did for me was he told me, you have to go teach. And I was like, I don't really feel like I'm ready to teach. And he's like, well, I said you are, so go teach.
So go teach.
And I was like, okay. So, and I felt so incapable of being a teacher at that point. I didn't even call myself an instructor. I called myself a senior student.
Right.
I was like, look, this is just a time where you guys are interested in Tai Chi. I have more experience than you in it, so I'm setting up a practice time where I'm going to offer you, I'm going to show you what I do and what I've been taught. But you got to recognize I am a student here, and I still I still go through my classes when I'm in there. That's my mindset. I'm still just learning. I'm still, every time I'm teaching a class, I'm exploring what I'm teaching.
Right.
And I'm using the students to help me see things I haven't seen before.
Exactly. Yep.
And to offer me insight to new ways of approaching a question or a new way to approach a practice. And sometimes, there are ways they're not valuable to me to approach it that way, but to have, other than the fact that it is a unique way of perceiving what you thought I was doing.
Right.
And this is another new way that you can go awry from what the real thing is. And what, it helps me refine my language about and the teaching process and the communication. Because, there's a funny thing about teaching, and particularly in art like Tai Chi. When you're trying to communicate something to somebody, and you know exactly what you mean, and you think that what you're saying is exactly what you mean, but what they're hearing is not that.
Right. Yep.
And it's so obviously demonstrated on simple things. Like there's this one exercise that I teach as part of a warm-up called counter swing. And it is inevitable that I would say 80 to 85% of the students, I will describe the process to them. I will specifically say the important points on it. I'll be doing it, and then I'll talk about the important points about it. And people will think that they're doing the exact same thing I am, and I look at them, and they're not even close. And other people in the class who have been doing it with me for a while see that they're not even close. And oftentimes they'll recognize the things that they were doing that were the things that were not even close. They can see it. And it's so surprising to me how much there is a translational gap between what we present, what we think we present, what we present, what they think they see, what they do see, and what they interpret from that.
It's the truth. And it's not just martial arts.
Oh, no. No, I mean, it's telephone, right? It's playing a game. It's like a huge game of telephone.
I started reading this book a while back, man, and I have it in PDF. It's really hard to find. But the book's called Science and Sanity, and it was written by this chemist, I want to say like in the 1930s, named Alfred Gerzybski. And it's a really fascinating book, but one of the things it talks about is how, or it explains, is I guess the laws of general semantics, and that revolves a lot around what you say to somebody, what you think you say to somebody, what they hear, and then what they perceive. Like, so sort of the tenets of this is that, that most people are multiple degrees of interpretive observation separated from what actually flipping happened. Or whatever it is, whatever they witness. So because what you think you see is colored by your life experiences, your mood, there's all of these things that are part of that, right? The kind of, so it's sort of also a lesson in objectivity. But the other thing that I really liked about the book was once you sort of understand what a person's semantic triggers are, okay, then that person actually becomes easily manipulated to an end.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And you see that, like, I'm reading this book going, Jesus Christ, this could have been written for modern day between Facebook and the propaganda and the media and the way things work, and stuff like that. But it is fascinating how it's that like eyewitness testimony, which used to be considered the best testimony. It's shit. You almost can't depend on that either, because people kind of see what they want to see, or what they think they should see in something.
Here's such a great example. I had this happen just today. So we were at the urgent care center earlier, as I mentioned to you.
Yep.
And my son and I had gone down to the cafeteria, and he had done his homework down there, and carried this homework down with him, and had accidentally left it in the cafeteria, and we'd left and gone back up and into the waiting room, and we realized it was down there, and we went back down, and it was closed and locked, so we ended up having to go get a security guy to go open it up and find it. And he went in, and he asked, as we were walking back down with the security guard, excuse me, he said to one of the cafeteria staff, who happened to be walking in around the same time, said, "Hey, this gentleman's son left his homework folder, left his homework folder in there. Could you look and see if it's there?" And those are his exact words. And she came back out and said, "Well, there's this red folder, but there isn't a yellow folder." And I was like, "Well, that's the folder." And she said, "Well, why did he say it was yellow?" And I'm like, we were both just looked at each other confused, because I know he didn't say it was yellow, and neither did he. And this is whatever, when he said folder, she conjured up something in her head, probably a manila envelope or something, and was immediate. And so she had the idea of it being yellow, and then applied words to him that he saying, in her head, she was convinced he said a yellow envelope, despite the fact that he did not. And he and I actually talked about it afterwards on the way back up. And, being a guy who works for security, it was, he's obviously had to study a little bit about, like, that eyewitness thing, about what people say and perceive versus what is really there. And we just had a conversation about this exact thing earlier today, about how easy it is for us to hear something, apply our mental image to it, and then hear and be convinced we heard something different than what was actually said, because of the way we conjured up images based upon our assumptions.
Right. No doubt. And I've been having some issues recently. We looked at, I was looking at possibly buying a house, a different house, and So I was working with a real estate agent, and it was the same thing. It was, okay, I'm looking for XYZ, but the agent would hear, yeah, but what you really need is da 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 da, right? So we went through a couple iterations of this before I'm finally just like, I'm done. I don't even know what to do with you. You're not hearing me when I'm talking to you, kind of situation. And the market sucks right now anyway. It's a tough market, but so we're back. I'm going to back out of the market and go back at it in a year or two again. But I think it's as I was talking to my wife about this. I'm like, why can't this chick? I shouldn't belittle like that, but why can't this woman just listen to what I'm telling her I want and what I can't accept, before, running me all over the county here, looking at stuff that I'm going to say no to, like it's this weird, like, well, maybe if I sell it just hard enough kind of situation,
Right.
But I think what that boils down to is someone that's driven by a commission, it's motivated to get a sell. So what they're doing is they're like passive aggressively sort of interpreting what you're saying and trying to find a way to restructure it so that you'll accept it.
And fit it into what's available.
Yeah. Yeah. And it drives me nuts. Maybe I'm an engineer, so maybe that's part of it. Like I when I say something, I mean it. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. Or when I give you a specific detail, it's important. Kind of thing, and real estate people are fall in love with the house, you're forever home, all this crap. That's not me. I don't care, but it does. It's weird how people will, like you said, when you can say something to them as plainly and as clearly as you can, and through their own prism of observation, they'll get something completely different from it. And then act upon it. That's the other thing, and then continue on. Like, it's like, I didn't say that,
And not only act upon it, but insist that their interpretation is exactly what you said.
And correct. Yeah. And the correct one, like, no, I heard what you said, and you want to go, bitch? Okay, fine. But that's not what I mean. You know what I mean? I'm telling you now that that's not okay. Kind of situation. So, it was fun.
Right. And then everybody gets hung up in who's right.
Exactly.
And that plays all into it too. And that's a real challenge.
And the problem doesn't get solved. It still sits there, right?
Right.
Welcome to the world.
Right. Yeah. Which is the perpetual issue with humans.
I have this theory, man. I've been dying to run by you. And it sort of, was fomented again from our conversation on things like mindful eating. I mean, it's been like 4 or 5 months ago, right? That you were on the show, that we did that show where we talked about all that stuff.
Yeah, probably.
So one of the things that I've kind of come across is that, and, kind of circling back on fitness and things that we were talking about before, but one of the things I've sort of come across is that the understanding, that unless otherwise diseased, the organisms, whether they're human beings or dog, whatever it is, okay, an animal of any kind, that its natural tendency is to want to be healthy, not unhealthy. So having said that, it takes effort, it takes effort to be unhealthy. And now I'm putting aside whether you have some sort of genetic disorder. I'm not talking about that, right? But I have this theory that the human body actually wants to perform. It wants to be healthy. It wants to be strong and flexible and all of these things. And it's through our actions that it becomes sick. Okay? So
but not just our actions.
Well, no. Well, let me finish this.
Not
right?
just our actions, because it's plugged. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so
sorry.
So this is sort of the theory I went with. All right, when I started down this road, so I said, okay, I want to feed the machine the fuel that it needs to build muscle, to build lean, strong muscle, right? So so that decision has determined the types of foods that I eat. Okay, I always want to eat inside my metabolic window when my digestive, all the enzymes and all that stuff's working. Okay. So that limits the time that I eat. Okay. And then the other piece of it was that I want to structure myself, my workout routines, whatever it is, around, and I'm going to use this word, but I don't mean it like this, around like a predatory structure. Okay. So my point was this. So the way I heard this explained to me was that the human beings sort of evolved into two states of existence based on seasons, growing cycles of crops, migratory patterns, things like that, right? But basically, there's two states of existence for for humans, the polar opposites. One of which is the gatherer state, which is the state that happens in the time when fruits are available to eat, berries, nuts, when you can grow crops, harvest them. There's that phase of existence. And then there's this other phase of existence. It's kind of like this hunter phase where you're not bulking up to survive a winter. You know what I'm saying? So there's like a storage mode, and then there's like the high performance mode. And where I think it gets all screwed up is that most people live in both, between the way they eat, when they eat, and how they approach physical exercise. They keep themselves either in that perpetual storage state, or they're somewhere in between or going back and forth constantly, neither of which is really that healthy per se, right? So that was sort of my theory moving forward, was like, okay, if I was alive 8,000 years ago, okay, what would my eating habits and what I'm eating and how I would exercise, how would that all look if I wanted to be in hunter mode, or the predatory state, I call it, right? And I see that just logically as you would eat calories in large chunks, but you wouldn't do it all day because you couldn't. You'd hunt the food, you'd kill it and eat it, right? And then it could be 2 or 3 days, depending on the circumstances, before you might eat again, per se. Okay. And along the way, I mean, they're eating things like nuts and berries and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that they're not in like a storage state. They're not bedding down for a winter and stockpiling and fattening up to survive a winter. I'm talking about the other state that the person that was alive, thousands of years ago would be in. And what sort of fomented this was that we know that animals live in cyclic patterns, cyclatory patterns, where, okay, so a dog gets a winter coat, and then in the summer, the dog loses its winter coat. Now, why does that happen? Right? Well, it happens because the days get shorter and the temperature goes down. And there's a biological switch that happens in animals, happens with horses too, like show horses, right? If there's real expensive multi-million-dollar breeding horses and stuff like that, and show horses, they put them in barns where they control the lights, and they wrap them in wraps and stuff to make the horse think that it's summer year round. You know what I mean? So I wondered, okay, are there biological switches in human beings? So this is kind of where my whole theories come from, right? About how you can eat, how you can exercise, and when you eat has more of a determining factor on how you feel and look than how many hours you spend in a gym. Like, I don't think that has much to do with it actually at all. I think it's more about those biological switches. And I was wondering if you kind of had any input or any take on whether you see that in your health practice as well.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that, I think, most people, when they think about I think that there's a difference between fitness and health, and I think it's important that you make a distinction.
Sure.
I think that they're related, but they are not exactly the same. You know, I know lots of people who are really lean and fit, but they're very unhealthy.
Right.
And I also know people who are overweight, not grotesquely, but they carry more. They're not this lean, fit
right.
thing, but they are quite healthy. And I think that the health is kind of individual. I think that you're definitely onto something about that, about the switches. I think that there's something definitively there. I don't know that it works exactly the way you're describing historically. I mean, I was reading this this article about a guy who actually lived with a tribal culture that still ate, you know, the way their ancestors did, and you know, they survived off of the land, and it was not what he imagined. It was, you know, first of all, food was not as big a deal as we have been led to believe. That it was a struggle for them to survive for food, because it didn't appear that way to him, and that he had a very rich variety. One of the main things he learned was that a tribal culture eats a lot of different things. Their diet is actually far more varied than we ever suspected, and that ours is. Ours is a lot more narrow, despite the fact that we have food from all around the world.
Right.
Most people cue in on specific things, and they eat those specific things over and over and over again, rather than having the necessity of eating different things, because you're not going to catch the same things day after day, or week after week, and at different times of the year you're going to have different foods available. And that was a huge part of it. And I think that there's definitely seasonal things. I mean, I know that even in the Chinese model, there's just, you know, eating right for the season is really important.
Yeah.
Eating, you know, and modern era will tell you, eat the foods that grow local to you, because that's what's in season, and it's what's right for your body at that time, because it's appropriate for the climate.
Right.
That's, I mean,
well,
we have overcomplicated food.
Well, this was where when I first kind of started approaching this theory, I went, well, okay, this doesn't make any sense, because not everybody. Okay, so if you're on the African continent, you're not going to go into storage like people maybe that are in Scotland would, or
exactly.
Northern. Okay, so I buy that. Norway, right? So there seems to be, it's okay. This is I'm making this shit up, okay? It's just my personal observations. It's a theory. That's it. Okay?
Yeah.
But
I got you.
So my interpretation of that has been, it's okay to be a gatherer. It's okay. Don't stay a gatherer. Don't stay there.
Yeah.
Okay? However, It does appear that it's okay to be a hunter all the time. Because if you look at like tribes, African tribes, if you look at tribes from like Australia and places like that, there is no winter season per se necessarily, where there was where there would be a period of stasis that you would be stockpiling foods and then weathering a period where nothing's growing. And then you run out of your food stockpiles, and you would start hunting, right, as you're planting the next year's crops and starting the cycle over again. But the hunter side of it seems to be okay. You can stay there and that's okay. But you don't want to stay on the gatherer side all the time. So that's kind of
totally agree with you there.
It's like another
a
nuance of it. It's kind of how it pulls together, right? And I agree. Go ahead.
You could take a northern climate, and there was still hunting going on. I mean, you know,
absolutely
the northern Europeans still hunted in the winter.
Yep.
It was just the meat was more scarce.
Right. It wasn't that it wasn't available. It was just, like you said, it's more scarce. So I got, and that's kind of.
Had to have stockpile.
So I used myself as a guinea pig here and said, well, I'm going to try this. You know, I'm going to see how. So it incorporates things like limited fasting, That's the technical name
Yeah,
for it,
yeah.
and all these things. But my theory was, if you exercise like, eat when like, a hunter would or a predator would, you will start to look that way. And and it worked. I mean, I don't know if I'm an exception or if I figured anything out
I think
or
that
whatever.
you probably hit on I think you hit on some great principles there. And I mean, you're talking about things that have been proven now anyways, the limited fasting, like eating within an 8-hour window in your day.
Right. Yeah.
And the other 16 hours fasting.
It's funny because everybody talks to me about the weight loss because I've dropped almost
Of course they do.
almost 60 pounds, right? And it's not the weight loss that's the biggest part of it. It's the freaking energy level. It's how you feel. It's the going to bed every night and getting a completely full night's restful sleep every single time. Things like that. I mean, I wouldn't stop doing this if I put the weight back on because I feel too good otherwise. You know what I mean? But
right.
But the weight loss is almost a byproduct of it. It's not really the focus. It just happens. It's like flipping a switch, that biological switch thing again. It's like flipping a switch and your body goes, "Oh, we're hunting now. Got it." And boom, the weight comes off, the lean muscle mass goes up through the roof, and it starts to make you look like a predator or somebody that would be physically capable of chasing prey. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a theory. I had blood work done and shit yesterday, so we'll see how bad it is.
Yeah. See what the blood work says.
Yeah.
I read this article about a guy who did literally a meat-only diet. And
there's a guy I follow that has done a carnivore, not a carnivore diet, a meat-only diet. They only eat meat. I've heard of this, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this guy this is all he did. And he did it for like 90 days or something. He did blood work before and after. And his blood work turned out to be very healthy when he was done.
That goes against...
Of course, he's fairly young. He's fairly young, so
right.
It's hard to say that, and it's 90 days. What happens if you do that for
3 years or
20 years?
Right.
Is it going to be the same? I don't know. I personally think that your body wants to have more than that.
Yep.
We don't seem to have the digestive system, the teeth of a carnivore. We're sort of omnivorous.
Yes. Yep.
So I think that we're probably better off. At the same time, an omnivore can survive as a carnivore. That's kind of the benefit of being an omnivore.
Right.
You can survive either way. Do I think it's ideal? I think you'll be lean.
Right.
I think that you'll definitely develop the body of a predator. Lean, fast, strong, enduring. I have another friend who's kind of studied, like the fact that humans are what are known as persistence hunters. That's what we were actually really good at. We're one of the most successful persistent hunters on the planet. There is another species that's a fantastic persistence hunter, and that's wolves. And that the way we actually hunt is to outlast them, that we wear them down because most of the animals that we would chase are either A, bigger and stronger than us, or faster than us. And so certainly tool using gave us an assist in all of that.
Yep.
But
opposable
the thing
thumbs.
that really, the opposable thumbs, but teamwork, the ability to work as a group,
right,
and wear down an animal.
Yep.
Just until it just had to give up. It just gave up because it just didn't have any more in it.
Right.
And that's what we're really good at. And we're made to cover a lot of ground. And there's a reason why marathon running is so popular, but also like so many people can do it. So we're kind of built for it.
Right.
You know, we're not like a cat. We're not like one of the great cats. Great cats can't do that. No great cat in the world could run for 26 miles. They would run out of gas long before 26 miles.
Yeah, but they can run 40 miles an hour in short bursts too, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's the trade.
60 and 70 if you're talking cheetahs. Yep. Right, there's a trade-off.
There's a trade, yep. And that's kind of where I'm coming from though, right? It's like if you structure yourself around a goal like that, and then you flip the right switches on, it just happens. It's not something. Okay, so that I guess.
Well, here's an interesting book that came out. I can't remember the name of the book, but it was a diet. It was like this way this guy had of losing weight, and he came about it because he started eventually studying some genetics and body fat and just biology and all that. But he noticed his cat, his very overweight cat, got out of the house and got chased by some dogs.
Okay.
And ran off and was gone for like 3 or 4 days. And he tried to come back a couple of times, but every time he tried to come back, these dogs were there, happened to be out at the same time, and chased him off again. And he finally came back, and when he came back, all of a sudden, nothing changed. The guy was feeding the cat the exact same amount of food, the same time of the food and everything, but the cat started shedding weight, just spontaneously shedding weight. He shed a whole bunch of weight. And so this guy did some studying and some thinking and all that, and he came up with the idea that the body would turn on and off certain elements of your genetic structure based upon your life. And that if you were coming from the place of, you were fat, dumb, and happy, and you were just laying on a couch and you had all the food you ever need and
right.
everything like that, and you didn't need to be fast and lean and mean, you wouldn't be.
Right. Agreed. Yes.
But all of a sudden, this cat had to be, like, he almost got caught because he wasn't quick enough, right? Because he was too heavy. So his genes literally turned on the ability for him to drop weight, and this cat suddenly, even though he didn't change anything else, just started dropping weight so he could be lean and mean and quick.
And it goes. And I don't even think it's debated anymore that traumatic events and things like that can actually. You tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's been.
Yeah, no, you're right.
It can alter your genes. It can actually
Absolutely.
change things in you. Traumatic events in your childhood, even stuff like that, can have an impact on you that way. So it does make sense
in a number of ways, and your response to those events, like your emotional response to those events.
Right.
Sometimes just being bigger makes you feel safer.
Sure.
So you gain mass because you feel safer being bigger.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, when you perceive that being bigger is no longer safe, you can have an event where you realize that extra mass is a problem.
Right.
And it's actually makes you less safe. And if you make a realization and it's an emotional realization at the same time, then you can actually trigger it back the other way. And that's what this guy's whole thing was. So what he used to do is he would exercise. He only exercised for like 10 minutes a day.
Right.
But the whole time he was exercising, he imagined he was being chased by a lion. And that's all he did. That is the only thing the guy did. And dude dropped a ridiculous amount of weight because he completely committed his imagination into it.
Yep.
Like he completely committed into that so he could create the feeling that he had to run for his life.
Right. Yeah.
And he did 10 minutes a day and he dropped a ridiculous amount of weight. I was like, that is fascinating.
Yep. It's possible. I think that we've overcomplicated these ideals.
Sure.
Way more than we need to. Way more than we need to. I think that and I also think that there's a summing effect, okay? for instance, it's not just exercise, it's not just diet, and it's not just the time you eat. Each of those three things are really, really good things, right? They're important. But anytime you couple two of them together, it's the sum. It's not just the sum of the two. It's greater than that. And the same thing happens.
The whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Exactly. And when you do all three, it's even more. Like it's more than just all three of them added together. It's like all three of them times each other. There's a weird sort of effect that happens there when you couple all three. That seems to be three legs to the stool: diet, exercise, and the time you eat. Okay. I think
I'm gonna throw another one in there.
Probably rest, sleeping and stuff like that's important too. But
sure, that's absolutely a huge part of it. But even above and beyond that, the clarity of the system. So, like, I do occasional fasting.
Okay.
Right? I'll these days I kind of generally only do about a 3-day fast.
Okay.
And I do it a couple times a year. What's interesting to me is I lose a little bit of weight when I fast, but for a good 45 days afterwards, I lose even more.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. Yep. I do 24-hour fasts periodically, Jeff. And dude, it's like pouring gasoline on your fire. It really is. It's like nitrous for a car engine. It takes everything you're doing and then amps it up again, a whole nother level. It seems like and not just like weight loss. That's the thing. It's not about necessarily weight loss. It's energy. Exactly. It's like a reset. A 24-hour fast, man, is like hitting the reset button on your digestive system, and you just feel amazing afterwards. For, like you said, for days, you feel great.
When I do a 3-day fast, the clarity of my perception increases exponentially.
Yep, I've heard that
and
too.
The depth of it.
Yep.
The depth of my perception increases dramatically. It's one of the reasons why I do it.
Yep.
That, and I just know it's good to purify your system. I mean, we've got so many toxins in our world right now, and everything that we do, it's just a good idea to cleanse your system.
Isn't it amazing, though, Jeff, how resilient the human body actually is when you step back and look at all of it? Oh my God, it's almost, that's the thing, short of being diseased, to be not unhealthy, it's unfit. Let's use that word. That's a better word, right? We said that health and fit's two different things. But let's say, it's, just for the sake of this argument, that it's fitness, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost harder when you kind of understand this stuff to be unfit than it is to be fit, because it doesn't actually take a tremendous amount of effort to be fit, air quotes fit. Not, I'm not talking about marathon, not ripped, not shredded, not marathon runner, not MMA fighter, healthy or fit. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about highly functioning person in society fit. It's not that. It's almost like your body wants to do that anyway.
Well, we get very divorced from our bodies. Most people are pretty distant from their body and its needs.
Right.
I think that while I get the essence of what you're saying, the reality of it is not that, because of that essential separation. For a lot of people, it's about learning how to be present with their body and its actual experience, including when you first start, its discomforts. One of the big things I observe is that people are constantly trying to bargain away their discomfort in order to but still get what they want. And my experience of working with the body has been that in the process of gaining health and vitality and more fitness, there's going to be, you got to taste bitter before you can taste the sweet.
Right. Here we go again, huh?
Bring it right back to that beginning. Yeah, bring it right back to the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to hear that discomfort not as something bad, but simply as a communication.
Well, that was a big one, and I'm sure you've been through this if you're doing 3-day fasts, okay, was the discovery that being hungry is not a bad thing. And getting that in my head that you're not in pain, you're not hurt, there's nothing wrong with you, your stomach's shrinking, get over it. Just kind of like stop letting that feeling dictate dictate your life kind of thing. And when you kind of get past that, then being hungry anytime is a manageable thing. It's like, I'm hungry, whatever. You just sort of move past it.
Actually, I like the feeling. That hungry feeling sharpens things.
I was going to say, I've heard that people think it makes you sharper.
It does. It does for me. There'll be times I will break my routines of eating, simply to make myself hungry.
Right.
Just so I can feel it.
Right.
Be with it. Let it make me a little bit sharper.
That's what some of the people that have been trying to do that have contacted me and said, I want to try doing what you're doing. That's one of the things I get from most of them is, oh, what do you do when you get hungry? I go, I don't eat. I mean,
I embrace it.
Yeah. You're hungry. So what? Okay. If, to me, it's no different than being cold or being hot or being hungry or being, it's just a state of being. It doesn't change anything.
It's just information.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just information. That's it. It doesn't, other than that, it doesn't really mean much. There's not food in your stomach right now. That's okay. It's okay for you to not have food in your stomach from time to time and for your body to be.
You won't die.
Yeah. And
not yet.
When I started looking into, man, like they record, I'm not going to cite studies on this, Jeff. Okay. So take this with a grain of salt, but from what I've gathered, things like your natural HGH production can go up on just a 24-hour fast, can increase by like 1,200%. Okay. So if you've got soreness, if you've got whatever it is, that's any malady that's happened, human growth hormone is part of the equation that helps you fix that faster. So when you come out of those fasts, you feel so much better because in ways that you didn't even know you were ailing, in the sense that muscle soreness and fatigue and stuff like that also goes away as part of that process,
Yeah.
So anyway, so we've covered the world on diet now.
We have. Yeah. We've meandered around quite a bit.
So what's going on? I'm seeing this Massachusetts is blowing up. Like they've got massive natural gas leaks and all kinds of stuff going on in and around Boston. Right? Have you seen this?
Yeah, all over Andover, North Andover,
yeah,
that region there.
Yeah, like
apparently there's like 60 explosions or something.
They're evacuating huge towns, shutting parts of cities and shutting the power off and all kinds of stuff. I thought the hurricane hit North Carolina. I'm not following what's going on here.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what happened. There's apparently something up with the gas company there.
Yeah.
The gas lines. I don't even. I haven't seen them. I don't tend to get a lot of my news from televised sources, simply because of the amount of ridiculous bias that's in there.
Yep.
And the propaganda, and they can do a lot more propagandizing through visual and audio than you can through a written word. And so I tend to try to get my news through the writing so I can filter it better.
Right.
So I will find out more about this tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a big deal, man. I mean, I was stunned.
Oh yeah, no, I've heard about it and I'm aware of it. I hope it doesn't spread this way. I don't. It's a completely different company than the company that we have here. So I imagine it's something different. But if it isn't, I'm sure I'll hear about it.
You guys are okay where you're at up there, right?
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, we're not that. I mean, I'm only, I guess, from North Andover. I guess I'm about 45 minutes from them.
So it's not far away, anyway.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear any explosions though, so they can't be that big. And I don't mean that in some kind of dismissive way. I mean more like, at least they're not so big that we're hearing them this far away.
Well, the thing here's what struck me.
But it sounds like when you're having 60 of them, that's. I hope people are okay. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and I don't want to make light of it because again, this is happening as we're recording. This is happening, so I don't necessarily want to discount the severity of it in hand. However, one of the headlines I saw.
You gotta be you.
I gotta be me, man. I can't help it. So here's what I think is ironic, I guess, or amusing to me, was that so they're like shutting the power off to entire cities up there right now, okay?
Yeah.
And they have these massive gas leaks, and the headline says, "No candles." And it just I'm weird. That struck me as hilarious because, you think about living in this progressive, technology-driven world, and now there's huge chunks near Boston that have been reduced to below candle power. And I'm just, I just find that so ironic.
But you can use a flashlight.
Yeah, you can use it. I guess you're right. You can. Well,
use a flashlight.
In the engineering, because I build systems that go boom. You know what I mean? I work with methanes and stuff like that. So there's a term of art that we call intrinsically safe. And intrinsically safe means that in that environment, there's absolutely nothing that's designed that can cause a spark or an arc. Okay?
Right.
The problem with a flashlight is it has a switch. It has a button that switches. So I'm not so sure that a flashlight would even be safe in those environments, to be honest with you. It seems like it would, but I don't think it would. I think it wouldn't be as dangerous as an open flame, obviously. But
so
glow sticks, yeah, you're reduced to chemical light. It's kind of where you're at now, or something that's sealed.
It's dystopian.
It's crazy, right?
Become a dystopian world.
How easy was that? That didn't take. I mean, again, not making light of. God, I hope nobody's died, and I'm going to regret talking about this way, or anything horrible like that, or it doesn't get worse. But it just struck me as odd or shocking that how easily our modern society could be reduced to below candle power just by one event.
I have often said for decades now, we have a thin veneer of civility in which we live.
Okay.
Our world has a very thin veneer of our civilization. It is, when you really look at it, it's precarious, and it's so easy for it to come crashing down.
Yeah.
And a huge element of that is when these things happen, the way humans react is to tear down those civilizing structures.
Huh.
Under the belief that they need to do it for survival, forgetting that our greatest strength lies in our cooperative capacity.
Oh my God. I can't tell you. How many times, this is a beef of mine, okay? I can't tell you how many people I've heard say that, or they believe in this lone wolf tenet, okay? Survival, this term, survival of the fittest, okay? And it's funny because it's like they somehow take that term and they translate it to society. And they say, it's a dog-eat-dog world. Only the strong survive, the weak get eaten, blah, 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 blah. But there is no evidence at all that any society has ever prospered that way, right? It's always prospered through cooperation, through mutual respect. That's how societies, otherwise you have chaos. The alternative is chaos, but it kills me how many people still believe that sort of concept that, this is Darwin, the survival of the fittest. I'm like, man, that's not even true. What are you talking about? There's no society that has prospered by everybody, all the strongest killing the weak. That's not how it works. It doesn't even work that, it doesn't even work that way in the wild. Animals herd up and pack up for survival, right? So they rely off of the mutual cooperation of others. So, again, I don't mean to go down a rabbit hole on this, but that's always been a bit of a pet peeve of mine to hear people say things like that. They don't realize how interdependent we are on each other. That even the people that think they're a lone wolf, it's like, shut the fuck up. You're not alone. Nobody's a lone wolf, okay? It doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's an archetype that has become an icon for the American male.
Yeah, alpha.
Particularly.
Yeah, this concept that's the way an alpha male exists, or whatever.
He can survive.
Yeah.
Completely on his own. He needs no one and nothing.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Completely self-contained.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Which is ludicrous.
It's ludicrous. It's completely ludicrous.
Ludicrous.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no foundational basis in fact that I've been able to find personally at all. And for so many people to believe that, it's like those it's like one of those phrases that people just utter. Oh, another one of my favorites, no good deed goes unpunished. And the only people that ever seem to say that to you is when something doesn't go the way you wanted it to. So like all the other good deeds I did, we'll just forget those, or all the other good deeds that didn't go punished, forget those. But this one instance where something didn't work out should be your blueprint for the rest of your life kind of idea.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I have learned to try to stay away from that person.
Yeah, right.
Who because they will steal your power. Like, yep. They'll steal your motivation.
Yep.
They will literally, they're trying to imprint upon you a negative outlook.
Right.
For your life.
Right.
And I don't buy it. I don't want it. I don't want that influence. I don't want any part of it. It's like they're trying to bring you down to where they feel they are. And the truth is they understand them to be.
Right.
And I don't want any part of that. I want no part of it at all. I don't need that.
I really struggle.
There's enough
with the nothing ever goes my way, folks.
Oh yeah.
I just have horrible luck, people, or the world's out to get me kind of ideals. It all seems to come from that sort of same energy, right?
Look, I will be the first one to say that, life is not fair. Things are not going to just go the way you want them to all the time. That sometimes heartbreaks happen.
Yeah.
Life happens, and it's not always easy or comfortable. Or at the same time, if your approach to that is to tell yourself and everyone else who will listen that you are oppressed by the world, then guess what? That is exactly what you're going to do.
Well, that's Henry Ford. That's whether you believe you can or you can't. You're right. Right? It's not the world. It's largely how you react to it.
That's not to say people don't get a raw deal. They do. But the only thing you can do with it, the only thing that's rational that you can do with that is to make the best of what you have.
Right. And that's
elsewise you're complicit.
Right. Exactly. You're aiding and abetting at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
You're And you've gone and just thrown in with your own enemy.
Right. It's stunning to me because it's self-sabotage. It's exactly
Absolutely.
You're sabotaging yourself. And how many Go ahead.
That's not to say that you don't sometimes need an ear to have somebody hear about your pain, about the hard things in your life.
Right.
But you can't live there.
Right. Don't build a house there. Right. Don't build a house there. Move on.
Right. you need to get it off your chest, and then you need to take whatever action you can to switch where you are and to say, okay, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna make the best of whatever I can about this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna accept what I can't change, and I'm gonna change whatever I can.
I tell you, one of the big things that helped me in my adult life was the understanding that I'm trying to think how to say this. I stopped kind of classifying things that happen or happen to me as good or bad. They just are. Okay?
They're just things.
They're just things. And the way I react to it is good or bad. Not necessarily, and people are like, oh, if you got, if someone shot you, that would be bad, right? And it's like, okay, you're misunderstanding what I'm getting at, right? No, I don't think getting shot's a good thing. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that when something like that happens to somebody, you can see people that have enormous, terrific, horrific life things happen to them, and then they out of the ashes, as it were, they'll come out of it. Some people will go out and they'll start charities, they'll start ways of like help groups. You know what I mean? Like people get motivated by it and they go, I'm going to change this, And then there are other people that things like that happen to, and it's the end of them. It not necessarily the end of their life, like they're dead, but it just crushes them. It breaks their spirit. And so there's a lot of, Jiminy, there's people that go through horrific, amazingly horrific things in life and come out and do amazing things. Consequently because of it. So I don't really have this belief anymore per se that things are good or bad. Like that's a binary classification that kind of just confuses everything. It's how you react to it is the most important thing. More so than what happened.
My favorite Taoist tale, my absolute favorite Taoist tale, I've probably told this story 1,000 times. I'll probably tell it 1,000 more times in my life.
That's how you know
because
it's good.
I like it so much.
Yeah.
is there's an old man and his son, and they live on a farm, and they have one horse, and that horse helps them plow the field so that they can pay their taxes and live and survive. One day, the horse breaks free of its yoke, and it runs off into the mountain. And the son is just beside himself. He's so distraught that this horse that helps them get the field plowed so they can pay their taxes and survive the winter,
right,
is gone. And now it's just the two of them trying to have to plow the land by themselves. And he is just devastated. He doesn't believe it can happen. The old man's just working. He doesn't say anything. He just kind of gets to work. And later that night, as they're coming back into their farm, all their neighbors come by and they say, hey, I heard you lost your horse. What a terrible set of luck. And, that must be so awful, blah, blah, blah. And the son is convincing with them about how bad it is. And they ask the old man, and he just says, the horse ran away. Good, bad, who can say? They're plowing the field for a couple of days, and about 3 or 4 days later, the horse comes back down from the mountain, and he's leading a small herd of horses. And the young man is just excited, and they corral them all up. And the horse, since he's so used to them, just leads the other horses right into a makeshift corral that they make out of sticks and rope, and they corral them all up. And now the young man is excited because now they have a whole herd of horses. They're going to be able to break some and sell them and have others and be able to have horse flesh if they want it, and just they'll be able to make a lot of money and maybe even expand their fields and hire farm hands and maybe get wealthy and be able to doing, and the old man just kind of harnesses the horse back up and plows the field and all that. And of course, the neighbors get word of it. They all come over, and everybody's celebrating, having a big party, and they're all excited about it. And they're saying, "What great good fortune you have!" And they talk to the old man. The old man says, "The horse came back. Good, bad, who can say?"
Right.
And they're like, "What is wrong with you, dude?
Right.
You're crazy." Well, days go on. The young man's starting to break the horses in, and he gets thrown by one of them, and he breaks his leg. And now he can't help break any of the horses. The old man doesn't know how to break any horses. The young man doesn't know. So I have to sell the horses unbroken, and they have to pay for a doctor who's going to come out and look for the guy. And so some of the horse sales is going towards the doctor, and the others isn't going to be as much as they thought it would be. And now they got to feed all these horses, and they don't even know how they're going to do that. And the young man is all upset. And all the neighbors heard about it, and they're all upset. And they come over, and they're like, "Oh, what terrible fortune, and that's so bad. Your son broke his leg." And the old man's like, "My son broke his leg. Good, bad, who can say?" And so they're all, just doing the usual thing. "You're crazy," and all that stuff. A week later, the army comes through and gathers up all the able-bodied men and marches them off to war.
Right.
The young man's got this broken leg, so he doesn't go, and he's still there.
Right.
A few months later, his leg is healed, and he's the only young man left in the village, so he gets the wife of his choice. Good, bad, who can say?
Who can say?
That's exactly, and that's just it. We never, in the moment we're in, have the perspective we need in order to decide whether something's really good or bad in the long term.
Yep.
In the short term, we absolutely. It feels bad. It feels, if you're shot, it feels terrible. It sucks. You have to go to the hospital. If you survived it, you're lucky enough to stats. All right, that was not a great experience. However, perhaps it kept you from another experience that was worse.
Yeah.
And it led you to meeting this person who led you to an amazing thing.
Yep. Yes.
Then if you hadn't been shot, you never would have met that person. You never would have had that opportunity.
Yep.
You just cannot know.
Yep.
And that's why you have to suspend good and bad about circumstances when they arrive, because you don't know how they're really going to be and what they're really going to do for you, good or bad. That's why I try to give up the idea of good and bad to each event.
Yeah.
As a whole.
I just made that shit up. I didn't know it was like a real thing. I was just like, well, this is kind of how it works, but it's good.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool to hear that there's at least, there's a Taoist story associated with, there's a Taoist story associated with everything though, isn't there? Pretty much.
Well, all perennial wisdom. Sure.
Of the human condition, I should say. I doubt there's one about, the internet or anything.
Being a monkey. Although there are a few of those.
Yeah.
It's the Monkey King and all.
Well, brother, we've been doing this for 2 hours, man. It just felt like 15 minutes, didn't it? It flew by.
Doesn't it always?
Oh, it does. Yeah. And I don't know that we shouldn't end on your story there. I think that's a really good breaking spot. But do you got anything else that you wanna cover before we kind of wrap up here?
No, I mean, if you want to see anything that I'm doing, I got a YouTube page and a Patreon page. Just look for the Occidental Taoist, either on YouTube or on Patreon. Just put it in a search engine, and I'll come up.
Okay.
And I've got lots of free videos and information and stuff that I put out there. If you're interested in Tai Chi or my perspective on it, as well as other things. I kind of go off on tangents sometimes.
Yep, understood.
I've been known to do that. I've got a lot of material out, but I've got a lot more that I haven't released publicly because I'm re-editing it all and reworking it. And then I've got a lot more planned in the future. I mean, I've got all this stuff with SLC TV and, with the Tai Chi, the way to radiant health. I've got some of the episodes on my YouTube page, so you can see that. I've got, in the future, I've got some ideas. I want to do, I want to talk about some metaphysics.
Right.
And I'm going to do some talks on that. I may do my own podcast just on metaphysics from the Occidental Taoist perspective.
You absolutely should, man. I can't wait. I'm a subscriber already, and it doesn't exist yet.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm gonna play around with that. There's just so many cool perspectives I want to explore and talk about, and people people whose work I respect in that. I want to chat with them too, and then even if I can't get a chance to chat with them, chat with other people about their work, different books and everything that I've encountered or talks that they've given and I've listened to, and anyways. I've got things planned. I have other television shows I'm going to plan for in the future too. Just because it's possible. I've been in addition to the Tai Chi, the Way to Radiant Health. I got asked by another local access television station around here to do a series of 6 Qigong episodes, and another one on strength, flexibility, and balance. So I'll probably do some things on that too. Those will be available at some point. I have no idea when. We haven't even hashed out the details of that. But I'm apparently going to be on television more. So
there you go.
That's kind of cool. Yeah, no, I'm totally stoked by that. I never thought I'd go in this direction.
Right.
At least not as an adult. When I was a kid, I was an actor and thespian and all that. And I was geeked out about the idea of being a performer, but I gave that up a long time ago. I didn't think that would amount to anything. But all that experience with it has been helpful because I'm a lot more comfortable in front of an audience than I would have ever been otherwise.
Yep.
So that's anyways. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Well, I guess now, obviously we're going to have you back on, man. I love having you on, especially I want to do a metaphysics, another one of those metaphysics chats with you. We had a blast with that the last time. Competitive.
Yeah, where we just amble off in 17 directions.
Yeah, remember it was competitive metaphysics, right?
No, well, it was supposed to be comparative metaphysics, but I think we turned it into competitive metaphysics. We thought that would be a lot more interesting.
It certainly was. Ding! And in this corner, Judaism, and in this corner, whatever.
Well, I think the world has actually done enough with the competitive metaphysics. Maybe we should stay away from it.
Yeah, please. Let's not do any more of that shit if we can help it, right?
Right. Yeah, no, there's plenty of that going around.
Well, brother, I can't wait to have you on again, man. And if you got anybody out there that you want to put on the show, by all means, let me know, and we'll work at getting them on. But I appreciate you taking the time, as always, and sitting in with me here and having a little chat. But that's the show for tonight, folks. Make sure you get over to YouTube and hit the like button so we can get our subscriber count up where we need it, so we can get my custom URL, because YouTube sucks. But hit the like and subscribe buttons over there. Check us out. The official Facebook group on Facebook is No Shit Cast. And so we're out there everywhere. We're on Podbean and all that other fun shit that Podbean does. But appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you all next time. Bye, Sickle.